Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing well as usual. So once again, I'm back today with another video, but there's a slight change of plan. You may recall in the last video I said in the next one, I'm definitely going to do another edition of black metal vinyl. Today I'm proven to be a liar basically, because I've decided to put that on hold, only because there's a couple of contests and threads coming up, so I thought I would change it up a bit. So that black metal vinyl one, that's the next substantial video that I'm going to do for my collection, but in the meantime I'm doing this contest today, then that collection video, then another contest video, just to change it up. So hope you don't mind, but that's the way it's going. So the competition in question today is for Josh Keech from the UK. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with Josh, great guy. He's from England and he's been running his channel for a few years now, and he just recently reached the milestone of 400 subscribers. So congratulations, Josh. And as always, it's very well deserved. Josh has been a long-term supporter of my channel, and he likes all kinds of metal music, like a range of subgenres, and he's getting into more at the moment. And in addition to that, he's also a musician, and he plays and he's released his own material. And speaking of which, if you win the contest today, you'll be eligible to pick up some of those releases, so that's cool. But as always, I'm not really doing this for the prize as such, but just to support a friend in the YouTube community who really deserves it. So if you haven't checked out Josh's channel, do so. I'll just leave the link in the description. So in order to celebrate this milestone, what Josh has asked us to do is a couple of tasks. So first of all, he's asked us to name 4 of our favorite bands. So that they don't need to be your all-time favorite bands, just like they could be bands you've been listening to a lot lately. Okay, so that's the first rule, quite straightforward. And the second thing he would like us to do is show 4 albums that you think would be good for getting someone into rock and metal. So imagine there's someone totally clueless, oblivious, they have no idea about metal music at all. Maybe they're even aliens, as he put it. And you just want to introduce them. What albums do you think would be a good introduction for such people? So yes, it's 2 questions with 4 parts each, so very quickly we will get into it. Alright, so addressing question number 1 then. So name 4 of your favorite bands. So I know I am somewhat of a predictable person, so I'm sure everyone's expecting me to say Kiss, Marduk, Cannibal Corpse. Yes, you're absolutely right, they are some of my favorite bands. Everyone knows this, especially if you've been watching this channel for a while. So what I thought I would do today is pick less obvious choices, just so I'm not so predictable and repetitive. So one of my so speaking of death metal, this is the main contender for me between this band and Cannibal Corpse as one of my favorite bands of all time, but I'm talking about Autopsy from the US. So classic old school death metal with a slight tinge of doom, so it's kind of death doom. I remember one time a friend of mine described it as obituary spliced with Black Sabbath, which is not a bad description actually, but of course the vocals are more guttural than John Tardy's. But just the main point is it's absolutely fantastic music, and this is death metal with darkness and atmosphere. That's what I like about it, is the fact that, you know, in the 90s with a lot of these bands when they were starting out, like this band and Broken Hope and Gore Guts, bands like that, there was actual darkness and atmosphere to the music. Whereas these days a lot of new bands, it's all about how fast you can play and how brutal you can be, how low and guttural the vocals can be. But this is actually just great quality death metal. And of course, like most people, I do like all of their albums. They reformed after a few years hiatus when they were playing focusing on Abscess. But yeah, I like all of their albums, but for me the highlight has to be from the late 80s through to the 90s. So, and these 2 albums would be my favorites, Acts of the Unspeakable and Shit Fun, just because these 2 are the darkest and most disturbing, you know, with that aforementioned atmosphere that I'm talking about. But absolutely love all of their albums, and I've got some of the more modern ones too. But yeah, Autopsy, just classic death metal. So Autopsy, that's one of my favorite bands. Alright, now going to some black metal now. Another one of my favorite bands of all time, people are probably familiar, is Enthroned. So Enthroned are a black metal band from Belgium, and they've always been around in the scene. Like, I've been a fan of this band since the late 90s. After I heard the very first album I heard by them was the Apocalypse Manifesto, and then I went back. But absolutely brilliant, criminally underrated black metal, sort of in the vein of, if you like mid-period Marduk and early Enslaved like Frost era, you'll probably like this. However, they do have a completely unique sound. Like, this band incorporates acoustic guitars, keyboards, but mostly it's like fast and blistering black metal, but with a lot of melody, and it's taking elements from 80s heavy metal as well. So sort of like combining black metal with traditional heavy metal and sort of Germanic thrash metal, you know, like Creator and stuff. So it's a really interesting melting pot, but just such a fantastic band. I own all of their albums. This is my favorite, Towards the Skull Throne of Satan from the mid-90s. But even since the bassist and vocalist Sabathan left, they continued with guitarist Nornaguest taking over on vocals. And I really like those modern Enthroned albums as well, even though the sound is quite different, but they're sort of going in a different direction. But the modern stuff is more kind of psychedelic and experimental and weird, but always makes for interesting black metal. So if you like black metal and you haven't checked this band out, I definitely recommend that you do so. So that's Enthroned from Belgium, another one of my favorite bands. Just a staple band for me. Okay, talking about another one of my favorite bands of all time, going to some heavy metal, and now I'm going to highlight a band, like I wouldn't say it's in my like top 3 or top 5 or anything, but I just think it's a really good band and they're underrated and they deserve more credit, and that is Krokus from Switzerland. So Krokus were a band, they was sort of their heyday was the 80s, I suppose, like during that like hard rock hair metal era. And what's interesting is they started out in the 70s with a completely different sound, but then they got heavily inspired by AC/DC. So I know a lot of people describe Krokus as an AC/DC clone, but like I said, there's no denying there's that influence in the riff style and the vocals and everything. But what makes it different is they also incorporate other elements of heavy metal. It's sort of like a melting pot of some of my favorite bands. So in a sense, they have been criticized as being a bit derivative, but everything they play, it sort of highlights the things I love about metal music. So it's mostly inspired by AC/DC, but you also hear some aspects of, for example, Def Leppard, Dokken, Led Zeppelin. So yeah, like sort of all classic hard rock heavy metal bands, but really good stuff. Some albums are glammier than others. This one's more like speed metal-esque, you could say. But yeah, absolutely classic. Like this album, Headhunter, is probably my favorite, but I love all of those albums in the 80s, even the glammy ones like the Blitz. So yes, especially if you like AC/DC, but if you just like hard rock and heavy metal in general and you haven't checked this band out, please do so. That's Krokus from Switzerland. And coming up to number 4 of one of my favorite bands, we're going back to some more black metal now. So this is a band, again, they're not in my top 3 or top 5 of all time, but I just think they're a really talented band and they deserve more attention and focus. And that is Moon Citadel from Finland. So I have mentioned them before on this channel. Yep, so Finnish black metal featuring Stormheit, who had his solo project and also played, I think may have collaborated with Satanic Warmaster and Goatmoon, but yeah, that's Stormheit on the front there. So Moon Citadel is just fantastic symphonic black metal. So if you like bands such as Emperor and Nocturnal Mortem, I think you would really like this band. But it's interesting with the way they use the keyboards, like those aforementioned bands. It just has a very Finnish melody and sound and atmosphere, so you can tell it's a Finnish band. And I can't exactly explain what I mean by that, but when you hear the melodies, they're very distinct from the Norwegian sound or anything like that. And this first album, this is sort of combining that with not just symphonic black metal, but this is when it was a bit more primitive, kind of pagan black metal where it's very frostbitten, but just the sheer atmosphere of this band, it's absolutely brilliant. Like it just makes me picture the cold landscapes of Finland during winter, you know, like the pine trees and the snow and everything like that, the frost. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, extremely atmospheric, and just a really talented band. So I've got this one. The one that's more symphonic is called, what's it called? Something Night Sculptured Symphonies. I'll put it down the bottom. This one is Moon Calls to Wander, the Winter's Majesty, which is like a double demo. But yeah, absolutely fantastic band. If you like black metal, check out Moon Citadel. Okay, so they're 4 of my favorite bands. So some of all time, some more current, but just to highlight some there. Now we're going to go into the next question, which is show 4 albums which you think would be good for introducing someone to hard rock and heavy metal music. Okay, so that's actually really difficult to do because there could be so many choices, and I've watched a few other people's videos and seen some excellent choices. At the same time, I stopped watching other entries because I didn't want to be influenced by other people, but I will say this, I agree with Tony, Tainted Lord 87. He said, I wouldn't show extreme metal to a person who's new to metal, and I agree because that's seemingly impenetrable, or it might be a bit too extreme, or it might put them off. As I've said many times with extreme metal, you have to sort of train your ear to that sound in a sense. So the albums I'm going to show today, they're all sort of classic hard rock and heavy metal albums, but I think they would be good introductions for people like an alien or someone who is totally oblivious to hard rock and heavy metal music. Okay, so the first one, we will ease in, and with these four, I'm showing them in sort of chronological order, if you like. So they should start with the first one I'm going to show, then go to the second, then third and fourth. Okay, so first of all, Kiss with Lick It Up. As you've heard me mention, this is my favorite rock album of all time. But I think it would be a really good introduction for people getting into hard rock and heavy metal, because it is hard rock, but it's sort of like the bridge between hard rock and heavy metal. This is one of the most metallic albums they've ever done, thanks to the shredding lead guitar style of Vinnie Vincent, and also they had the new drummer Eric Carr, who is much heavier than Peter Criss. So yeah, it's sort of like, it's very rocking, it's very accessible, and indeed there were some songs which became hits, you know, commercial hits, like the title track Lick It Up, and also All Hell's Breaking Loose. So some very anthemic songs. These songs are just very melodic, full of hooks, very catchy and easy to nod your head along to, so I think it would be a good introduction. And in addition to that, they have some faster, more frantic songs with like a melodic shredding guitar solos like Gimme More and Fits Like a Glove. But yeah, to me, this is just a 10 out of 10 album, and I think it would be accessible to the average person. And I've actually played this album to people who don't really like metal and rock, and I've heard them say, oh, this is pretty good, who's this? Kiss, of course. But yes, this would be my first choice as an introduction to hard rock heavy metal, to ease in very nicely. All right, then the second one, going in chronological order, I think to introduce someone to heavy metal music, you can't overlook the new wave of British heavy metal, because that really was the blueprint for a lot of metal that followed, like even thrash metal and everything. So I decided to go with Killers by Iron Maiden. So a lot of people, Iron Maiden need no introduction, of course, classic heavy metal band, but a lot of people would probably say, oh, you should have chosen Number of the Beast. Yes, that's an obvious choice, but I think this one goes back to the gritty, raw roots of new wave of British heavy metal. Like Number of the Beast was a very epic and well-produced album, but this one was when the band was very raw and, dare I say it, punky. I know they hated punk, but it was sort of that fast, frantic sound. Paul Di'Anno, rest in peace, his vocals are excellent and they're really raw. I just like the raw production on this album, but you already begin to hear those like bouncy melodies and those hooks, like so many hooks in Iron Maiden, but like on this album, like Another Life, like those melodic hooks in the solo. Like, I'm not going to mention the songs, but you know it, but just like, it's sort of quintessential heavy metal, you know, in terms of the riffs, the vocals, the guitar solos. So yeah, to go right back to the roots of real heavy metal, I would say, yeah, that person should listen to Killers by Iron Maiden. And there's not a bad track on this album. So yeah, that's my second choice. So remember, these are going in chronological order. So once the person's dipped their feet in hard rock with Kiss, then been introduced to heavy metal with Iron Maiden, the next album that I would recommend, this is a bit of a step up, Kill 'Em All by Metallica. So this was, when I first heard this album back in the day, it was like 93 or something. I was 14 years old. I went, now I understand. This is what pure heavy metal is. And I know technically it's thrash metal, but just before that I had heard the Black Album and I had heard other heavy music like hair metal. But when I first heard this album, it was like the penny dropped and I went, so this is pure heavy metal. Like absolutely classic album, raw, fast and furious, but it's still melodic, very catchy, great menacing yet melodic vocals from James Hetfield. And it's just like fast and frantic, you know, with songs like Motor Breath, which is a bit punky as well. And, you know, songs like Hit the Lights, like absolutely, it's just pure heavy metal, great guitar solos. Everyone knows this album, so I don't need to say much about it, but I remember this was one of the first albums that made an impression on me. And, you know, it may seem like a cliched choice, but cliches come from something being so well established, so popular. But yeah, I think this is a great introduction because it is fast, frantic and furious and very extreme, but at the same time, it's also melodic and catchy and accessible enough, yet retaining that rawness. So that would be my next choice, Kill 'Em All by Metallica. And coming up for the last one, more quintessential metal alert, I decided to go with Megadeth with Rust in Peace. Yes, quintessential metal alert. Like, again, Metallica was a thrash metal band. Megadeth was also a thrash metal band. You know, everyone knows the history about them forming from Metallica. I won't go into it. But yeah, what I love about these two bands is they're both very different. Like Megadeth, I think, is a lot more technical and progressive. So this is an album where it's very off-the-wall songwriting. I'll just put it that way. Extremely jazzy, like there's a lot of twists and turns in the music. They don't just follow the structure of verse, chorus, verse. guitar solo, bridge, and then back to the verse. They just go off on different tangents and ideas, but it's very technical, very precisely executed, and just so original because it's unpredictable. So some people might say, oh, is this really the album to start with then, because it's a bit off the wall? But I think it's just to show the potential of metal music. It's not that limited. This band, I think, did something completely unique with this album, and I still love it to this day. In addition to that, very technical, yet at the same time catchy. It's atmospheric. Like, just that opening riff in Holy War's The Punishment Due, and then the thunderous drums start. You're like, whoa, strap yourself in for an intense ride. And this was the first Megadeth album I heard back in the day, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but just hearing Dave Mustaine's vocals, which I know a lot of people don't like, but for me, I just thought, again, that's original, and I quite liked it, and it just imbued the band with a different character. But yeah, absolutely classic album. That would be my next choice, Megadeth with Rust in Peace. So of course there's a lot of other albums that I could have shown, but we're just limiting it to 4. So there you go, guys. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet today. So I've introduced you to 4 of my favorite bands, and 4 bands that I think would be ideal to introduce to a newcomer to hard rock and heavy metal music. So tell me, what do you think of my choices? What do you think of these albums? Let's get some discussion going, as always. And once again, Josh, thanks a lot for running this contest. It's a great idea, and I had a lot of fun doing it as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and Josh, congratulations once again. I'm sure you'll hit 500 subscribers in no time. So with the next video, guys, I'm going to probably go back to black metal vinyl. However, there is another contest, and with the contests, they're easier to put together than some of my collection videos. So I may do the other contest video next, I'm not sure, but plenty coming soon. So anyway, I'll stop babbling. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for your support of the channel, and go and check out Josh's channel if you haven't. All right, guys, so take it easy and have a good day. Cheers.